Hi, good afternoon. Can everyone hear me today? Just making sure our audience can hear us. Fantastic. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Erika. Ivan, I assume you can hear me too. All good. Um, Buenas tardes, familia. Good afternoon. My name is Edgar Palacios, and I'm the Executive Director of Revolución Educativa. Um, we are an organization working to increase and build power within the Latinx community around issues of education here in the Kansas City area. And so, in that effort, we are also trying to be in constant and consistent communication with our community about what we're doing, about issues that we deem important, and about how to best engage you all in these conversations, right? At the end of the day, we are here for Latinx students. And so we all have a responsibility as a community to show up for them whenever possible and make sure that they have the best experiences and outcomes available to them. I am joined by a phenomenal group of people, Team Rev Ed. We have Christy, we have Erika, we have Ivan, and they'll introduce themselves here in a little bit. But I would be remiss if we just didn't acknowledge what happened yesterday in Uvalde, Texas. And so I think the latest news that there are 19 children that died, two teachers that died as well, and then of course the teenage gunman who also died. And so it is a grave moment. It's a moment that we continue to experience time and time again, and it's a real moment for the community, and this is not what we expect for children. This is not what we expect for schools. This is not an environment that we think this shouldn't happen, and here we are. So I just want to create the space to acknowledge the gravity of the situation that occurred yesterday in Uvalde, and to say that my thoughts and prayers are with the community is not enough, but it is a moment of acknowledgement. So, anyways, I'm going to kick it over to my good friend and colleague Christy, and hopefully she'll have some words as well to say.
Hi, comunidad. Thank you very much for tuning in. And if you're not watching live, I'm sure you're going to watch later throughout the day as you scroll through your feed. We're very happy to be here with you and to bring some updates on the work that Revolución Educativa has been doing in the last several weeks. We've been busy, and we're getting busier as the needs in our community arise, as we build awareness about the work we're doing in support of Latino students, Latino families, Latino educators and administrators, and the community as a whole. Again, we've been very busy. We just wrapped up the legislative session that went from the beginning of the year, January through May, as it does every year. And we've been pretty active supporting in some advocacy initiatives that are important to our community, that are important to Latino students. And so the first one is that I want to talk a little bit about funding equity. Now, funding equity is an issue that has existed actually for about 17 years now here in Kansas City and in St. Louis, where the two cities where by statute charter public schools are allowed to operate. Through this public school system, there are over 25,000 students in the state of Missouri that attend these schools. And our Latino representation in the school populations is only increasing. Right here in Kansas City, charter public schools in the traditional district are already at a split of 50-50% as far as the children that are served through these education systems. And out of those, we have a significant amount of Latino students and families selecting this education system for their kids. Now, the funding inequity had been existing, and that funding gap had been widening year by year by year as the funding formula had not been updated. This is an issue that I personally, as an advocate of public education here in the state of Missouri, have been advocating for 4 years. And I'm very pleased to share with the news that finally the funding equity bill that is in support of 25,000 students in the state of Missouri has passed both the House and the Senate, and it has landed on the governor's desk for his signature. That is the final step. So we are pretty much with a foot across the finish line, just waiting for that signature so that this bill can be become a law. I am very excited to share with you that throughout this legislative session, I, along advocates, allies, parents, educators, school administrators, and students, took 4 trips to the state capitol, advocating for this initiative and this bill, bringing personal stories, bringing testimony, knocking on our legislators' doors, because we believe that representation matters, right? And so they need to see our community represented, knocking on their doors as lawmakers and hearing directly about the impact that these efforts have had on our student population, on our schools, and in our community in general. So I'm very hopeful that Governor Mike Parson will sign this without any hesitation. We pretty much, right at the end of the session, had bipartisan support on both sides of the House and of the Senate. So we're very excited about this bill being signed into law and bringing full funding equity for public school students across the state of Missouri. Now, I just want to share an update. There was a huge I would say a transformation as far as the process through this bill went through. And in the end, there was a substitute bill that was created that contained the language, but actually shifted where the stream of that funding, how it would flow through the schools and to the students. And so there has been, I just want to mention that the districts are remaining untouched. The funding is not going to stream through them as it has done before. This is a new sort of like a pot of funds that is coming directly from the government, from the local governments and the state governments to the schools, creating around $63 million funds that will take care of this funding inequity. So almost there, almost across the finish line with funding equity. Thank you to everybody who came with us, who picked up the phone and called their representatives, who wrote emails and letters, who was present when we've been having legislators visit the schools and talking to families and students and educators. And so very excited to almost cross this finish line. I'm sure we will have a final update during our next community charla regarding funding equity. Tuition equity is the other legislative initiative that we supported throughout this session. Tuition equity, to summarize, and we do have our policy memorandum for both funding equity and tuition equity available to you on our platforms, social media platforms, and on our website as well, which those policy memos explain our why, our ask, talking points around the issue and the need that the community has to solve this issue. Tuition equity is specific to undocumented students or DACA immigrant students being able to, as Missouri residents, receive resident in-state tuition to further and to pursue college or higher education. Now, currently, the state of Missouri does not have tuition equity. All of the surrounding states do. And what this means is that immigrant students who do not qualify to be deemed as Missouri residents have to pay international tuition rates, which are almost 3 times as much as what a Missouri resident would pay. This means that our children who are graduating from high school, youth who want to pursue, higher education, have to make really, really tough choices. A lot of times, meaning that they are just not in possibilities of furthering their education. This is an injustice, and we're fighting for this. We had a great coalition of Missouri supporters of tuition equity come, it was April 20th, to Jefferson City to advocate, to visit legislators, to ask them to support the removal of language in the budget, higher education budget bill that actually includes this wording, really, that bars our Missouri resident and documented students to have access to higher education at in-state rates. The fight continues. We are building stronger coalitions. We're mobilizing. We have great plans throughout the summer and the fall to continue this advocacy efforts. And then, of course, once the legislative session begins next year, we will be, hitting this campaign hard with newer partnerships and a stronger and louder voice. I
Christy,
want to get back. Yes.
Just before we move on, we have somebody watching us today, and we have Denise Gomez on with us, and she's asking some really pointed questions. So I want to make sure that we address them. So first and foremost, there's a question around why don't we have any schools that are in Kansas City or Johnson County that have the option for our children to become bilingual. I only know one school in Olathe, but our children deserve more. So I can speak to that just a little bit. In Kansas City, particularly within the Kansas City public school boundaries, there are a few schools that actually encourage bilingualism within our students. And so I will name Foreign Language Academy. They focus on Spanish. I believe they have Mandarin there, if I'm not mistaken. Of course, as well as English. We have Academy Lafayette on the charter side, which we have, I think it's a French immersion school, if I'm not mistaken. We also have on KCPS side, we have a Carver Dual Language, which is a bilingual school in Spanish. And so there are a few options within I may be missing a couple, but there are a few options within the Kansas City public school system, including both district schools and charter schools around that. And then there is a more pointed question around why we aren't interpreting. And Christy, as our resident interpreter, I'd love for you to kind of speak to that and how we plan on increasing and demonstrating language access to our community.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for those questions. I will also add that we have several schools that do offer the seal of biliteracy to those multilingual or bilingual students, which is also a great opportunity for them to include that. As their or students are building their resumes, the seal of biliteracy is very impactful. So there are several schools in the greater Kansas City area that are offering that. I know, for example, Lincoln Prep Academy, Crossroads Charter Schools, they do offer that seal of biliteracy for our multilingual or bilingual students. But that's a great question, Denise. Thank you so much for bringing it up. Now, part of our efforts as Revolución Educativa is stressing the fact that language access for limited English proficient families, for English language learners, is a civil right. So it is very important to bring awareness to the fact that language access, both verbal, which would be interpreting, and in written form, which is what we call translation, are a must, right? And so if our students are not receiving the information, communications, education in their preferred language, right? Specifically talking about the communications and family and parent engagement, to build a strong partnership between the school and the home. This is a civil right, and this is something that a lot of people, including sometimes schools, are not aware of. So part of our work with Revolución Educativa is empowering our families to request at all times that when they're meeting with their schools, when they're receiving communications, when they're engaging in the education of their children, that their preferred language, their home language, their heritage language, must be respected, and that information should come to them in the language of their choice. Now, it is important that parents communicate their language of preference, right? So when the beginning of the year starts, when you're doing enrollment forms, applications, there should be a box somewhere. There should be a place where you assign what language you prefer to receive the communications in, and that this is regardless of options, right? School districts must accommodate this communication need. And so it is very important that we make our administrators aware that we are in need of language access services. This is an effort that Revolución Educativa is really pushing forth and forward. I personally have been or did quite a bit of work in the last few weeks around language access for students, specifically one student at high school and university academy. It was wonderful being able to provide that, bridging that gap, bridging that language barrier. And so I was brought in, and Revolución Educativa was brought in as a partner in support of end of course testing. With the student, in which I will practically tell you how it worked out, right? In Missouri, we have the possibility of when a public school student needs sight translation or read aloud in the language of their preference, we can provide that. So for 5 days, I was working with this Latino student whose biggest dream and biggest goal in life at this point is to graduate from high school. And this really speaks to the mission and the core of the work we do, bringing education equity forward for our Latino students, specifically our English language learners that at times need a little bit of our support as a community and as adults to show up and provide them the tools they need to be most successful. And so I literally sat there for hours. These tests are not easy. High school standardized testing is not easy. But making sure that the student was comprehending and understanding all the text that they were testing in. So definitely one of the biggest needs as we work with families, as we work with our community and ask what the greater needs are, language access, which pretty much means communication in their preferred language, rises to the top, which really is urgent, right? We know that every district should be fighting this. And if they're not, we're here to support, we're here to educate, we're here to bridge that gap.
I appreciate that, Christy. I also want to quickly just say that I'm really proud of the fact that we actually have a fully bilingual team here at Revolución Educativa. I believe that Spanish is our first language on all of our accounts. Although I will say that I speak Spanish probably the worst of all of us. Nobody else come up? Okay. But to your point, Denise, also want to be thoughtful around the fact that our content is actually going to be delivered in Spanish and English. This is our English version of this content. We will also have an offering in Spanish around it so we can appropriately support and serve our community as they see fit. You'll also note that in a lot of our communications already, we are making sure that they are bilingual. And oftentimes we lead with Spanish. And so I also appreciate that push and that reminder that we consistently need to be thoughtful around language access as we also demand that of our school districts and the folks that support our children. So I want to elevate that. Ivan, if you can take me just quickly back. These are all good pictures. Thank you for this. I just want to be thoughtful around literacy. Yesterday, a couple of days ago, I heard something around the fact that only 80 students within 80 out of 500 students in Kansas City, or Latino students, are only at the third grade proficient level in reading. And so we have a lot of students in our community who are not at that level of literacy at third grade, which ultimately determines whether, essentially, if they end up in jail or not, right? I think that's how prisons actually plan for their population, is whether students are on reading grade level at third grade or not. And so there's a lot of work to do right there. And there's a lot of issues that we need to address as a community there, which that'll be one of our priorities. And then leadership. And what we mean by leadership is we also want to see folks who come from our communities, who look like us, who speak both languages, who are thoughtful in this work and understand the Latino community in those positions of influence long term. And so those things are going to be continuous and ongoing for us. And so if you have any ideas and suggestions on whether you want to engage, whether it's advocating for more language access opportunities, helping our students have better literacy uptake, and maybe even volunteering and reading in Spanish, small things that can change the way that we do this work. And then, of course, if you're interested in potentially running for office or serving on a board or commission, please feel free to connect with us. We're here to help you connect, and we're also here to support you as you move forward in your own career and advocacy for our community. If you want to go to our next slide, Ivan, thank you. A lot of cool things. Christy, I'm going to kick it back to you.
Yes, yes. Entonces ahora voy a hablar en español porque sí tenemos una necesidad de presentar esta información en español. Gracias, Denise, por tu abogacía, por traer este contenido en español. Hemos estado hablando del trabajo que ha estado haciendo Revolución Educativa en los últimos meses, en particular en 3 áreas fundamentales: la equidad de fondos para los estudiantes de escuelas charter públicas en el estado de Missouri, que asciende a más de 25,000 estudiantes. Venimos siguiendo y apoyando esta ley para el cambio en el financiamiento, ya que nuestros estudiantes de escuelas charter públicas no han estado recibiendo los fondos que les corresponden de acuerdo a un error y una ineficacia que había en la fórmula de financiamiento para la educación pública. Estamos muy contentos con la noticia de que finalmente este proyecto de ley ya ha pasado. Lo único que hace falta ya es que el gobernador del estado de Missouri firme este proyecto de ley para que ya se torne en una ley, y entonces nuestros estudiantes de los cuales aquí en Kansas City una buena porción son estudiantes latinos, reciban los fondos que les corresponden para financiar su educación pública. Las primeras imágenes que vemos en esta diapositiva, estamos varios grupos de nosotros visitando el Capitolio en Jefferson City. Tuvimos 4 viajes esta sesión legislativa, hablando con oficiales electos, con senadores, con diputados, con representantes legales sobre la importancia y el derecho que tienen nuestros estudiantes, sin distinción de a qué sistema de educación pública asisten, que reciban los fondos que les corresponden por ley. Así que esta es una iniciativa de ley que nos sentimos muy contentos de haber estado apoyando desde el principio de este año y que estamos a punto de ya cruzar, ahora sí como decimos, la línea terminal, la línea final, para tener una victoria para todos nuestros estudiantes y que haya un financiamiento equitativo para todos los niños en el estado de Missouri que asisten a escuelas públicas. El otro proyecto de ley que hemos estado apoyando es la equidad en las colegiaturas para los estudiantes que se gradúan del high school o de la preparatoria y que quieren continuar sus estudios hacia la universidad. Actualmente, Missouri es el único estado con los que colinda que no tiene equidad de colegiatura para la educación más allá de la preparatoria. Esto quiere decir que nuestros estudiantes indocumentados o nuestros estudiantes inmigrantes que califican como receptores de DACA no pueden lograr pagar la colegiatura a una tasa local de residente. Esto quiere decir que se les cobra una colegiatura internacional, la cual es prácticamente inalcanzable, ya que son casi 3 veces más de lo que cuesta la colegiatura de residentes. Seguimos, este proyecto de ley en esta ocasión no tuvo una audiencia pública, sin embargo, nosotros visitamos el Capitolio con varios estudiantes de high school de las escuelas Guadalupe Charter Schools, participaron en un proyecto con nosotros de abogacía durante 3 meses y logramos hablar con muchos oficiales electos y pedirles que pongan atención a este asunto. Todo este trabajo fue en colaboración con la coalición de políticas migratorias del estado de Missouri y con IFCLA, que se encuentra en el lado del estado donde está St. Louis. Esta batalla continúa, le damos muchas gracias a todos los que nos han acompañado, los que han rendido testimonio, los que han hablado públicamente de cómo esta inequidad les afecta personalmente en su desarrollo personal y profesional. La lucha continúa. El tercer punto que hemos discutido también es el acceso a las comunicaciones en el idioma de preferencia, lo que llamamos en inglés language access, el acceso a todas las comunicaciones, la educación, la información, las invitaciones de las familias a participar en la educación de sus hijos, tiene que por derecho civil federal venir en el idioma de su preferencia. Revolución Educativa se siente muy orgulloso de llevar este estandarte, de poder siempre compartir y ayudar, educar y también brindar los servicios de idioma a nuestras familias que desean involucrarse más en la educación de sus hijos. Y también nosotros hemos venido apoyando a varios distritos escolares que han tenido la necesidad, quizá de una manera emergente o urgente o de una manera excepcional, de contar con servicios de interpretación y de traducción fuera del compromiso que tienen de contratar servicios de acceso de idiomas con agencias de interpretación locales. Así que este es un trabajo que venimos haciendo porque nosotros que nos centramos en nuestra misión de avanzar el desarrollo, de avanzar el desempeño educativo de nuestros estudiantes latinos, definitivamente el acceso a los idiomas de preferencia y a esa comunicación es crítico para poder impulsar a nuestros niños, a nuestros estudiantes a tener mayor impacto en su experiencia educativa. All right. En estas fotos nada más les comento, a mano izquierda tenemos a uno de los senadores, el senador Kenneth, que hizo mucho trabajo por pasar el proyecto de ley de equidad de fondos para las escuelas charter públicas con uno de los grupos de defensores de nuestros niños que viajó. En el centro vemos a los estudiantes de la Academia de Impacto de Guadalupe Charter Schools que hicieron mucho trabajo de abogacía por la equidad de colegiatura para nuestros estudiantes que quieren estudiar una profesión. Tuvimos un programa también para el Día de las Madres en donde a nuestras mamás Rebed, que son un consejo de madres que nos brindan apoyo, que que están ahí al pie del cañón en la educación de sus hijos y de nuestros niños. Tuvimos una oportunidad fenomenal de celebrarlas en el Día de la Madre. Y las últimas fotos que tenemos es nuestro compromiso con involucrarnos cívica y políticamente, porque sabemos que nada puede cambiar si no traemos los asuntos a las conversaciones donde se toman las decisiones. Específicamente respecto a la educación de nuestros niños. En la foto, la última de la derecha hacia arriba, me ven a mí con la visita de la representante diputada Yolanda Young, que tiene a muchos de nuestros estudiantes latinos en su distrito, el distrito 22 de la ciudad de Kansas City, Missouri. Y también queremos darles la noticia de que el equipo de Revolución Educativa ya ha sido registrado con el permiso y tenemos toda la capacitación para registrar a nuestros constituyentes para que voten, para que usen su derecho a levantar su voz y tener un impacto a niveles legislativos, a niveles políticos sobre nuestra comunidad. Quickly here in English, I'll transition to explaining a little bit about the pictures that you're seeing. Very excited to share some of the activities that we have been carrying out. So the first column, you'll see Senator Koenig, who did a lot of work on making funding equity possible to pass both the House and the Senate, as well as one of our largest groups of advocates that traveled earlier this year to the state capitol to advocate on behalf of funding equity. Then we have some pictures with our students, the student supports that we have been able to have impact in, whether it was for language access or for advocacy for tuition equity. Also, we had a wonderful way of celebrating our mamas in our community. We were able to gift them with a gift card that they could share on Mother's Day to celebrate them, to celebrate with their families, as well as the opportunity to show up and tell them we are here for you as an education advocacy organization that is here advocating for you, for your children and their schools. And the last one, we're committed to civic action, to political engagement, because we know that the only way to bring about change to our communities is through legislation, through policy, and through becoming engaged in those decision-making tables. We had the visit of Representative Yolanda Young from District 22 here in Kansas City just a couple days ago, actually yesterday, I think, and asking her to, show up for our communities, to engage with Latinos in her district. And had a wonderful conversation with her. We want to thank her publicly for coming to visit our community space. And just the last news to share with you that Revolución Educativa is committed to representing our community and bringing the resources and the tools so that Latinos in our state, Latinos in Kansas City, register to vote. Voter engagement is critical, specifically with and for the Latino community. And so our team has taken the training and we have become deputy registrars. We will be doing a lot of engagement and activity regarding voter engagement, voter education, because we need to use the power of our voice, and we exercise that through our right to vote. So I'll kick it back to my teammates if you guys have additional items to share today.
Nothing additional to add, Christy. Again, thank you for all your work on this. Just quickly, I also want to recognize very publicly that funding equity is not a new issue for you. You have been actually working on this issue for the last 4 years, and I believe you're one of the first. You were the first parent to advocate in favor of funding equity, and so I wanna one thank you for your advocacy at the beginning of the issue, and it's exciting to see you see this through and see this through this work. And so, again, so important that we have representation, like folks like Christy who are willing to speak up and advocate on behalf of our community, because that's what it's going to take.
I appreciate it. The many trips to the state capitol, 3-hour drives back and forth, a lot of them in one day, bringing other amazing fellow advocates, parents, and educators, as I've shared. I have learned a lot. I have grown a lot in building my advocacy muscle. And this is really what it takes, right? It takes us as constituents, as stakeholders in the education of our kids, to start showing up. We really go to school to learn how to advocate. We learn that through lived in experience, and through really, taking action on the issues that matter most to us. So I am very proud, and just kind of like I, I keep saying like I'm not fully celebrating, but I am, but it's almost there, and we just need the governor to sign this bill into law. But yes, I am celebrating, the power of constituents, to advocate for the needs that they care most about. This one was very close to heart as a parent of two Latino students that benefit from the charter public school system. And so I want to thank you for that public recognition. I think it is very important to recognize all advocates that have been fighting this fight, that have been using all the tools and resources available to advocate for their children. Because the reality is that, people sometimes are like, I want to do something, but I don't know how. And it just takes the community, right? It takes us as a team of people that care, to come together to support each other and to take the necessary actions to move these issues forward.
Thank you for that, Christy. We always welcome our folks to have questions. I see that we may have a comment, and so just making sure that I'm working this. Denise says, I've worked at two schools as a teacher, but are considered bilingual, but I live in the Johnson County side. I've only heard of one school in Olathe. I worked in Devon Public Schools, and I just have very high expectations of what a bilingual program should look like. You know what? Denise, I so appreciate that. And I think you're absolutely right. We have to have high expectations of our districts, the folks who are serving our students, because we all know that education is a civil right. Regardless of status, regardless of language access, regardless of these other issues, like it is important for us to educate our children, and that is critical. And so, Denise, it seems like you are a proud advocate and you are a tireless advocate for this work. And so, we'd love to connect with you offline to see how we can help support you in your journey, and our collective journey of demanding what's right for our students and what's possible for them, such as a high performing, high quality bilingual program, in Johnson County, if not in the state of Kansas, right? I think we also know that Kansas is becoming more brown day by day. And so, making sure that the entire state benefits from the work that is happening. Always welcome to ask us questions. If you have any questions, you can also leave them in the comment. We may not have responses, but we'll make sure to respond at our next session. Erika, I see one of my favorite kids out there.
Yes, as you guys all know, school's out, so that also means that we have to multitask.
I love it. It's what it's about. Thank you all. Yvonne, just special shout out to you for continuing to help us deliver the best quality content out there. It looks good. It looks great. Really proud of the work that you're doing and helping us tell the stories. So thank you all, Christy, Erika, Yvonne. Appreciate you all and appreciate the community for staying with us. Oh, of course. Typical Edgar. I missed one of the most important things. Yvonne, I'm gonna kick it to you.
Yeah, this afternoon, we just recently, Isaura Garcia was elected as the first Latina school board member of St. Joseph School District. So we'll be chatting with her in a revved up conversation stream live today. And also, as you know, Reved is honoring and celebrating the legacy of Cesar Chavez, a dedicated Latino that focused on change for immigrant families and Latinos in general. So we're going to be highlighting 25 impactful change makers. That reveal is coming soon, so stay tuned. If you're not registered for our newsletter, we'll drop the link in our comments so you can be registered and be one of the first ones to find out who these 25 change makers are. And lastly, there's a link, and I will circulate it in a little bit, but take some time to fill out our parent survey. I'm sure Christy can tell us more about it. It will be open for a couple of weeks. We want to hear your opinions, your experiences. So yeah, bit.ly Reved parent survey. And that's what we got coming up in the next 2 weeks.
So yes, thank you, Ivan. We're very busy, as you can tell. Erika, thank you for showing up with this beautiful kid. I can only see like the top half of their face, but it's always a joy to remember and to see our kids. We do this work for our children. They are the present and the future of our society, and we must continue fighting for what we've promised them, and that is a high quality public education. We've promise our children day in and day out that we will do everything we can so that they have a happy, joyful life. And that is why we do the work we do. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you all, the RevEd team, for showing up and having this community charla. Please follow us on social media. I know Ivan is actively feeding those platforms with relevant information, both needs and also proud moments of celebration, like the one we're going to be celebrating today with Isaura Garcia. So stay tuned, sign up to receive our newsletter, and just come visit us if you're in Kansas City, Missouri. We are in the Northeast District, in the Pendleton Heights neighborhood. We would be happy to see you stop by at our community space in 2203 Lexington Avenue. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias por su atención. Y síganos en nuestras redes sociales para más avances, más información y para la necesidad de involucrarse en este movimiento de abogacía por la comunidad latina. Muchas gracias.